Good morning, children. Today we'll be reading the lesson together, our 10th lesson, Aesop. So I want everyone to open your textbooks to page number 71. So we'll be reading the lesson and we're going to underline few words. And so, shall we start? Okay. Lesson number 10, Aesop. Do you know what fables are? A fable is a short story usually about animals who talk like humans. These stories are tales of wisdom which give us a moral lesson on how to act in difficult or tricky situations. So, as we have discussed, fables are short stories in which animals can talk like humans, and mainly they are stories of wisdom and they give us a moral lesson on how to act if difficult situations comes in our life. Next paragraph. Among many stories, there is the one about the mice who held a meeting to decide what to do about a cat which kept attacking them. One mouse proposed that they tie a bell around the cat's neck. The bell would tinkle and they would be warned about the cat. So the first story is about the cat and the mice, in which the mice held a meeting, and one mouse he told that if they could tie a bell around the cat's neck, they would be warned about the cat and they could be alert and they could escape from the cat. So, from this story comes the idiom or the saying, who will bell the cat? That means, who will uh, perform this dangerous act. Next paragraph. The mice agreed that it was a good plan, but an old mouse asked, but who is going to bell the cat? This story tells us that it is easier to offer dangerous advice than to act upon it. So, the moral of the story is anybody can give any dangerous advices, but to perform them would be much more dangerous. So, this is what the moral of this story is. Now, let's look at the next story. Another story tells about a fox who found a lot of grapes in a grapevine. So, underline the word grapevine. The meaning of the word grapevine is a climbing plant on which grapes grow. Okay, grapevine is a plant in which the grapes grow. So, it's a climber. Next sentence. The grapes were high above him. He tried to jump and eat the grapes, but he could not reach them. So he gave, next page. So he gave up trying to eat the grapes, saying, the grapes must be sour. This story teaches us that we often console ourselves by finding fault with what we cannot achieve. So this story is about if we have a practice that if we don't get anything, we just start complaining about those things. So that should be uh, that practice should be what it should be removed. Okay, that's what this story is about. Next paragraph. Many of these fables are believed to have been told by a man called Aesop, who used to live in Greece over 2500 years ago. We do not know about him except that he was a slave. So, this man Aesop, he used to live in Greece, and that too like 2500 years ago. Okay, it's 2500 years ago that he lived, and we don't know much about this man, but we knew that he was a slave. Let's look at the meaning of this word slave. Slave is a person who is a property of another and must work for him or her. That is, in the olden times, there was a practice called slavery in which wealthy people would buy poor people. Okay, that is, they buy them as slaves or servants, not exactly servants. Slave is a person who is more lower than a servant. So the slave has to work whatever the master says. Okay, and this was later abolished. This practice was, as this was a wrong practice, later it was uh, just abolished or just taken away. So Aesop was a slave. Next sentence. He is known to have been far wiser than his masters. We are not sure whether he told these stories himself, but they have been known as Aesop's fables for centuries. Like from thousands of years, we have been knowing that these stories are written by this person named Aesop, and these stories have been very famous from that time till this day. Next paragraph. Apart from the fables, there are also many stories about Aesop himself. Okay, Aesop himself had a lot of stories to share. So let's look at it. The first story. Many, many days ago, when men and women were sold as slaves, Aesop and two other men were put up for slave. Xanthus, a rich man, wanted a slave and he asked them, "What can you do?" The two men said that they could do many things as both of them wanted a wealthy master. There was a person named Xanthus. He wanted a slave and he went and asked two boys, "What can you do?" And these boys said that they could do everything whatever the master says. Next sentence. Xanthus asked Aesop the same question. "The others can do so much," said Aesop, "that there's nothing left for me to do." So this was the answer Aesop gave to Xanthus. So Xanthus asked the next question. "Will you be honest and faithful if I buy you?" said Xanthus. And Aesop replied, "I shall be that whether you buy me or not." So Xanthus asked few questions and Aesop gave the answers which are very, very interesting. And the next page, page number 73. "Will you promise not to run away?" Xanthus asked another question, one more question. "Did you ever hear of a bird in a cage promised to stay in it?" Answered Aesop. So when Xanthus asked questions, Aesop gave the answers which were also questions and which Xanthus had to think about. So next line, next sentence. Xanthus was so pleased with the answers that he bought Aesop. So Xanthus was pleased because of the answers that Aesop gave and he bought him. One day, Xanthus foolishly accepted a dare that he could drink up the whole sea. Then he grew anxious and went to Aesop for advice. So one day Xanthus, he just put forth a challenge. Then that challenge was a stupid challenge, a foolish challenge. And finally he knew that he could not do anything and he went to Aesop for advice. So next sentence. "It is not possible to complete the task," said Aesop, "but I will show you how to not to do it." So underline the word task. The meaning of the word task is an activity that is difficult to perform. So task is an activity which is difficult, which is very hard to perform. So Aesop gave a suggestion that you cannot do this task because it's impossible to do, but I can show you how not to do it. So let's find out what happened. Next day, the two men went to the seashore. Many people went with him. Aesop had got there earlier and set up a table with a lot of large glasses upon it. Xanthus' servants stood nearby with jugs to fill the glasses. Xanthus took his seat at the table. Then he turned to the man who had dared him and said, "My challenge is to drink up the sea. I said nothing of the rivers and streams that are flowing into it. Stop these, and I will keep my part of the deal." So Xanthus told that, We have already discussed this lesson, but still I'm just just discussing it once again. So Xanthus told that, okay, my challenge is to drink up the sea, but you must stop the waters of the rivers and the streams flowing into the sea. Then I will keep the part of my deal. That's what Xanthus said. And that too, this idea was given by whom? By Aesop. So that's how intelligent Aesop was. And there's one more story about Aesop, which is very interesting too. Another time, Xanthus was going on a long journey. He told his servants to put his things together into bundles so that they could carry them. When everything was neatly tied up, Aesop went to his master and begged that he wanted the lightest bundle. Wishing to please his favorite slave, the master told Aesop to choose the one he wished to carry. Next paragraph. Aesop picked up the basket of bread. The other servants laughed at his foolishness, for that basket was the heaviest of all the baskets. Next paragraph. After traveling for a few hours, Xanthus and his men were hungry, so they stopped at an inn for a meal. Inn is a place like homestay, so where we can just rest for some time. So in the older days, they were having inns. Okay, not like now how we have hotels and all those things. Now, so let's look at the next paragraph. After they had rested, each man took bread from the basket. Half the bread was eaten at this meal, and when dinner time came, they finished the remaining bread. And turn to the next page. For the rest of the long journey over rough roads, Aesop had nothing to carry, but the loads of the other servants grew heavier and heavier with every step. So the first day itself, the luggage or the weight became lighter, and Aesop had nothing to carry. Okay, so this is how Aesop tried to handle tricky or difficult situations. And these stories have been inspiring a lot of people from centuries. And till now, it's uh, followed. So, this is a story, and I hope you like the story. I want everyone to read the lesson once again. And so, in the next class, we'll be starting our exercises. And until then, take care and bye.